Little reunion today.
Yeah.
We got Ryan Reyes in the house, affectionately known as Rhino. What's up, Ryan? Welcome to the studio, dude.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Rhino. That's right.
It's been a while. We had, we'll talk a little bit about the history, but Ryan worked for us for years here at Red Dot, and then ultimately moved on to bigger and better things, which we're going to talk about today. Super excited to talk about that. So I think first off, just publicly, congrats on all the success, man.
Thank you.
You've certainly earned your place doing what you're doing. And I always knew this part would happen. There's always going to be a circling back. We've been trying to get this for a while to kind of hear a little bit about your experience and what you've been doing in the strength and conditioning world at the NC2A level. And so there's so many things I wanted to cover with you, but welcome back, man. It's really good to see you.
Thank you. I'm stoked to be here and actually see the operations inside this little studio. It was built.
It was barely kind of moving when you left, and so here we are. We're back, and now it's
the podcast was barely moving.
The podcast, was barely moving. Right. I mean, now we're doing 3 episodes a week. We're dropping 3 episodes a week. The one on Monday, which is generally health, wellness, fitness, performance related. Got Friday, which is the After Dark version. We talk fitness, firearms, preparedness, all kinds of stuff. A lot of entrepreneurs on that show that are in a sort of the firearms or training industry. And then now on Wednesdays, we have a whole new episode. We're 6 episodes in or 6 weeks in with a new company I'm working with called In Extremis Performance. So generally on the mic, you're going to hear Jake Labhart, Jacob Hepner, Aaron Duggar, and or myself talking about some of the things we're doing over there, which is specifically centered around the human performance piece and law enforcement officers and members of the military, other first responders as well, but very specifically working with law enforcement officers. So it's come a long way, dude. It's come a long way. But let's get into you, man. So first off, origin story. I just kind of let the cat out of the bag that you had been a coach for us for quite some time. You came on, I want to say, was it 2019 or is it 2018?
I think.
You were an intern in 18. You interned with us in 18.
I did.
And at the end of 18, I believe. And then it was all 2019.
When did you graduate college?
2019.
Okay, so
I was still going to school while I was interning. So
I think we met him in 2017, at the end of 2017, maybe.
I don't know. Was he with us for 2 years? I don't know. I just know so going back, it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
That was quite some time ago. It's at least 5, almost 6 years ago now. You used to work at a little spot around the corner from us that's like a wine bar, but also has multiple craft beers on tap and stuff. And we were running our Christmas annual staff Christmas party there. And we had met, I think we had known one another, or just from, because we used to live in the neighborhood here and we were in there on occasion. But there's this dude behind the bar bartending. We had our very unruly crowd in there that night. I think we kind of took over, and it was just a little bit wild. But I don't even remember how that conversation started. I just know I started to recruit you pretty hard right there.
Yeah. So I remember you two coming in as regulars. It was either once a week or once every other week. You're always, smashing IPAs. You're drinking Zinfandels, the darker reds and all that.
I do like my beer.
I got it in here still.
I do like my beer.
That's the bartender in you.
Yeah. And so it was a slow roller. I think the first year your guys' Christmas party was upstairs.
Yep.
And I remember because I had Ryan in one of my psychology classes.
Another Ryan.
Yeah.
That's right. Anderson.
Yeah, that was kind of an icebreaker. So I was kind of working there. I was still working as I think a bar back and kind of, busting on the side, slowly working myself into working behind the bar and pouring drinks. But that was the first interaction. And then the second year you were at the front.
Downstairs.
And I was serving that crowd. And whoever...
Oh, you were over-serving that crowd. It's probably more like...
I was bringing pictures of, I think, Pliny or some crazy 7%. I was like, all right.
Probably. Probably got
There's
up
some
pretty
big
quick.
people on that team.
Yeah. I was bringing over our little buckets of ice with, white wines every other, 10, 15 minutes. You guys were putting in work. But
it's a good time. We were celebrating, man.
Yeah.
Right.
We were celebrating Christmas. And whoever brought the
Those white snowball
the
things.
slingshot things
Yeah.
Oh.
for the white elephant.
Yeah.
Good on you, but I had to clean that up. But it was, I think it was towards the end of the night. I think Doug, the manager there, kind of bridged us, and you came up and you said, "Hey man, here's your card. If you want to ever intern with us, stop by." And I was like, "Of course, man, I got to do it for, class credits." And at the time, me personally, I didn't know what direction I wanted to go post-graduation. I was putting in a lot of work and time with physical therapy. I was being a PT aide, all that stuff. And, physical therapy itself, for me, in my experience through college, it was put on kind of a pedestal. So like everybody was attracted to it.
Gotcha.
Without knowing what it was.
Like pre-PT students is what you're talking about, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everybody's doing their prereqs and stuff, but like everyone's jumping on that saying they're going to do it without really kind of experiencing it. So I was a PT aide and I was experiencing it, but I quickly found it just wasn't the pace that I wanted to build a career off of. So, once you gave me your card, I was like, all right, I'm going to stop by. I think must have been that Monday or Tuesday. Came in, this place was beautiful, clean, big walls, open space. And I just remember I was like, all right, I'm a little nervous. Hopefully I don't sound like an idiot talking to this guy. And I think we chatted and we just started the internship from there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So a couple things pop up for me. First off, I'd forgotten until we started talking that this started with an internship. We have an internship program at the local university here, have for a lot of years, started even before we moved into this location. And part of that's Cece's connection to that university and the departments there from her time as a professor there. But we've had several folks come through, and you were much different than all of those people. And one of those things was this goes back to the bartender thing. So when I first started in this business, and I worked in a bar too. I was doing some sort of similar job, but I was working more at the door and let's just say customer service was maybe more my role. We'll just leave it at that. And a lot of guys that worked at the bar also worked out at the gym, and some of us also worked at the gym. And so it was kind of this thing. And bartenders usually did pretty good as personal trainers because they knew how to talk to people, right? And they had this really good understanding. And generally they took pride in their appearance, and so that kind of suited them. And then they kind of knew everybody, so it kind of worked, kind of fit. And so when I saw, and we'd gotten to know you, like that, you fit that bill. And I was like, well, I've seen this before. We used to actually go. So when I worked for a larger company, I used to go to bars and recruit trainers, out of bars. I used to recruit membership salespeople from the cell phones kiosk, like the AT&T, Verizon kiosks out of the shopping malls, because those guys had tons of sales experience already. They knew how to talk. They loved talking to people, and they were aggressive as hell. Like, I mean, if you got to sell cell phones in the shopping mall, right, at one of those kiosks, you got to be on your game, or if you're going to be successful at it. And so we used to kind of do these things, which might sound weird to people, but that's how that conversation got started. I'm like, dude, this dude could do it. And obviously knowing, what you were doing at school, like that had come up previously. So your undergrad work that was being done there and in kinesiology. So anyhow, yeah, it's funny as you come in and we get going on this internship. One of the cool things about the internship, particularly with you, was the interns have some flexibility on how they want to create their internship with us. What are their learning objectives and what are the objectives for the internship as decided by the intern and their what would we call this? Like counselor, supervisor or whatever, and so you wanted to know and do some very specific things. And one of those was just kind of understanding the back end of the business. Like, how does this business run? Which was super cool for us. And so we were able to not only bring you on as an intern, but ultimately like, hey, let's get this guy working for us, right? Which obviously is what was going through my head in the first place. But so we started you at the desk, like the front desk, answering phones, right?
Yeah.
Greeting people, understanding the navigation as far as everything that goes on behind the front desk.
Cleaning equipment, emptying the garbage, right? Like cleaning toilets, all of that stuff, which, and we can talk about the strength and conditioning, role, as a strength and conditioning coach, and maybe how you kind of have to revisit some of that stuff when you get into this. But dude just did what he needed to do. And then ultimately, you start shadowing folks and shadowing our coaches and then getting in there. You're a total natural. So again, to see where you're at now based on kind of where we started, it's kind of cool to see. So catching up, I mean, you were here for several years, built a clientele very quickly. I would say you're probably the lead coach with regard to productivity, as well as depth and breadth of knowledge. Not necessarily with the most experience at the time, but your ability to catch on and apply that experience was awesome. So it's like a gym owner or a personal training director's dream, right? It's just whoever, let's just put him in front of this guy and he'll take care of him and it'll be fine. And so that was everybody. I mean, the types of people you were working with were pretty vast, pretty broad. I mean, that's what we see at Red Dot anyway. So it gave you obviously some certain experience and whatnot there. But I want to go back to the PT part, like the physical therapy part, because I remember this, and a lot of interns come to us with PT in mind. Like, I want to be a physical therapist. And we've had several of them on the show who have their own stories about that. But talk about what you kind of talked about, like they put it on the pedestal in the institution of education, but there's a disconnect between a student's understanding of what that is and what the realities of it are. Can you get into that a little bit more?
Yeah. So, I mean,
I know you're not a physical therapist, so you can't speak from that perspective, 100%. but you were on that track a little bit for a while. So
yeah. So I feel like everybody, at least myself, was striving to get to kind of that prestigious role, and they're putting in work in the school and, getting to that prestigious role. And for everybody in kinesiology, including myself, was physical therapy. Yeah, I mean, it's a doctor. You're working as a doctorate. And so before I actually came out to San Jose, I worked in a PT clinic, got to, work hands-on and all that good stuff. But it just was, what I was looking for was more kind of like a holistic approach to health, right? Like, I feel like the time at Red Dot and my ability to see that, I mean, we're basically training people and working through injuries and developing protocols and all that good stuff.
A lot of what we do looks like physical therapy.
Yeah. And so I think I was chasing
more integrated.
It's a lot of it does, not all of it. Yeah.
I was kind of chasing that feeling without knowing it. I thought that was the end all be all. I was chasing that feeling. That's what I'm going to go do because I want to do that. It wasn't until I got in here in these walls, I was like, oh shoot, they're doing that. They're doing this. I think I align more with this and these parameters and being able to train individuals and build a holistic approach to health and all that good stuff. So I think it wasn't until I was introduced to the real world that it kind of opened up my mind and to see exactly what you can do with the knowledge.
Yeah, it's interesting that the blinders, again, you don't know what you don't know as a student. I mean, CC, you've got a ton of experience there. I mean, again, you were a professor and teaching some of this stuff in the athletic training department, but maybe you can talk to your experience as somebody that had experience and then having to deal with students, right? And their misconceptions or their blinders or whatever on as an
instructor.
Yeah.
Ryan was one of many that when he came to us and was talking about wanting to go into PT. And I think one of the huge disconnects is the fact that, they don't get to really experience it. They have the coursework, but within that one program at that institution, it was all coursework. There wasn't really any hands-on experience. Whereas with athletic training, there was classes specifically to the lower extremity, upper extremity, head, neck, and spine, very
there's application
specific to rehab and to the modalities that are used in rehab. And so then there's also a lot of labs where you're getting hands-on. And so I think the students that are more in the route of athletic training, they had a better understanding of as far as what is expected in that occupation. And it's not just dealing with a specific injury. You're dealing with the whole athlete, the whole person, as far as their experience, their stresses, what they're doing, in school, as well as then with sport. How are they making the adjustments? And there was more, I think, yes, hands-on experience versus didactic experience, classroom experience. And so the other thing is with a lot of the people that were saying they wanted to go into PT, I think it was very clinical for them. They hadn't had much experience outside of where else they could take that career path. And so knowing Ryan and his history and what he wanted to do, I was like, are you sure you want to do PT? Think about your past experience as far as being a PTA. Is that where you want to spend your time? And I think just through discussion back and forth, he was, I don't know, encouraged to look and see where else he could go with his education through the kinesiology route. So strength and conditioning, working physical therapy. Does he want to go to a college? Does he want to go to high school? Maybe he does want to go to PT after all. But I think just getting an idea of different career paths.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's interesting that you bring up the coursework for athletic training and the pre-PT route, right? The prerequisites. In my experience through school, like, yeah, you're in biomechanics lab and then you're doing exercise physiology, but you're not taking courses that are very parallel to athletic training until you apply and get into PT school.
Or you're in some type of an internship that happens to be doing your internship or clinical hours that happens to be awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I think me not having that, I did have that experience, but not in the depth of being in these walls, doing the job and actually doing that. Because for me personally, I learned by doing hands-on, trial and error.
Yep.
I'm going to either sink or swim. And so I feel like going back to being in here, I was extremely green. I had no training experience or anything like that. But you guys gave me an opportunity to help build my craft and experience that stuff. So that's what kind of opened up my eyes to being able to be in that position of chasing what I wanted to do in college, but actually applying it in this setting.
Right.
So
you had the freedom and flexibility to be able to, I think, develop your own philosophy and your methods. And you didn't come, while you say you were green, you still had experience because you were an athlete once. You had been injured. You went through that experience as far as through the rehabilitation. So, and then you had your formal education at the institution of higher education. But when you came to us, you did have some experience and you did have some depth of knowledge. It was then practically applying what you were learning in the classroom with real people.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that come up for me here. One, I remember these conversations early on when you came on, and I remember having them with Cece and maybe one or two other people, and just saying, "I hope this kid doesn't choose physical therapy. It'll be a huge waste of talent, and I think he's going to hate it." I still think I'm right about that. But the other part is, when you came on with the experience that you had, and maybe didn't have, I think one of the things that like an environment like this allows you to experience versus maybe even at the university level, I think that's very dependent on the institution and the program and the individuals you're around, but you get the opportunity to fail. And, that you're not being handled with kid gloves and, coddled the entire time. It's like, no, this is your job. Go do it. Make some decisions. Tell me why you made that decision. Let's talk about it. Yeah, we're not going to put you in a situation where you're immediately going to fail. We're going to try and coach people through that situation. And then again, you make a decision. Why did you handle it that way? Maybe I'm not saying it's wrong or it's right. Just, do you have an answer for why this is? And you allow people to make those decisions versus like, then there's not really a pass fail on this. It's a learning experience versus I have to pass the test. Tell me the answers to pass the test. And once you passed a bunch of tests and then you recognize, I don't really know how to problem solve here. I know the answer to this specific question, but all these questions are actually a little bit different and there's nuance in all of this. And so that's, I guess I'm saying all that to say, and kind of going down this road for parents that are listening, also for coaches that are listening or students that are listening, that are going through their own journey right now, and to think about some of these things before they make, decisions about how fast they can get to the end. Because one of the things that you did was you took your time, right? And probably, I'm sure during the time you're taking, it feels like an eternity. But I mean, to think to where you were 5 years ago or 6 years ago to where you are now, it's not that long ago, dude. I mean, it really isn't. It was just it feels like it was kind of yesterday. I know sometimes it may feel different, but those are the experience that I had in my own career path, is that people gave me some room. They recognized my talent. They recognized my strengths. They also recognized my weaknesses, and they allowed me to use those in a way that benefited them, the client, and me. So it was, and more specifically, in some cases, it was always looked at as what is the benefit of the company, right, or the institution, and then it was what's the benefit of me, the manager, or the student, or the coach or the teacher, or whatever else, and then ultimately the student. And I like to think if more people maybe put the student in front of all of that, and they would recognize that those other two things almost always get taken care of in the end. And it certainly has worked out for us, and it did for you, I think, both here and then also elsewhere. So let's talk about it. So you're here for a couple of years, you're training all these people. For anybody that's out there, there was also some other contributions. That is for anybody out there that's been on our Red Dot Fitness Strong or Max program. Ryan is really a good deal of what that programming is, what it looks and feels like. And it still holds up to this day. Tons of confidence. And that was another thing. It was like, look, this kid's got talent. And I say that affectionately, not disrespectfully, the kid thing. But he's got talent, and he's going to need to, I want him to look further than the client. So, just the client he has standing in front of him. What if you had to develop something for the masses, which then obviously leads into what you're doing now, with teams? Can we work together and benefiting, again, the coach, but also the company and the clients, with these programs. And so Red Dot Fitness Max and Red Dot Fitness Strong have Ryan all over them, basically stamped on them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a legacy, when you look at it.
Yeah.
All right. Ultimately, you leave here. So the decision gets made. You want to go into strength and conditioning. Tell us about it. What happened? First stop was Stanford. Couple months prior. I think it was, we were all gung-ho. I was all in, we were creating Red Dot Strong and Max and all that. And I was looking beyond these walls. It wasn't even a thought in my head of, what do I want to do? I was, tunnel vision, 10 toes down. It wasn't until I think we're across the street or next door. God, yeah, because COVID came up. Are you
referring to the outdoor gym?
Yeah, man, that was miserable.
No, not at all. I love that. The concrete jungle was awesome.
Jesus,
that was
you're the only one,
man. Shout out to my 6 a.m. clients for training in 40-degree weather on the outer of COVID.
Wind.
Yeah, rain, wind,
in the dark.
Yeah, it was amazing. But next door with the Scar Lounge, I think it was us.
Oh yeah,
hanging out. Oh. And it wasn't even in my head. And you guys brought up saying, we had a conversation the other day, and we would be not bummed. I forgot how you put it, but if you're still here within a year, we would be, surprised. Let's just say that. And so I started thinking.
No, I think the word was disappointed.
All right. I was trying to put it down a little nicely.
I think that's what we said. Yeah.
And so a couple of thoughts in my head came about. It's like, oh, all right. Like, how far can I take this? Where can I go? But another one was, these two really invested a lot of time in me, right? And they grew me, and everything that I know came from you two. And now you're trying to, let my wings fly.
Yeah, push you out of
get me out of here. Get the fuck out. So I think it was a email thread for, San Jose State alumni. And there's a couple times that it got brought up, but it was an internship with football for Stanford. And it just so happened that next week after the conversation popped up, and I said, you know what, I'm going to put my hat in the ring. I think I want to take the next step. I want to get into collegiate sports. I want to see exactly how a prestigious program is ran. And I know that there is, sports-specific knowledge in there. And I was chasing more information, more knowledge. And so I put my hat in the ring, got an interview, did it in that office next door. Super nervous for that one.
Right. This is all like Zoom because it's COVID time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I totally forgot about that.
Yep.
Yeah. And so another big obstacle due to COVID was the whole HR situation. So I think I said my goodbyes in January, February. No.
It was December, I think.
Yeah.
Or no, it was early because it was during season.
Yeah.
It was going into the season.
It was in the summer season.
It was late.
It was a blur. So I said my goodbyes here, and there was like a month and a half, 2 month lull. Like season's going, I haven't gotten the call of, A-OK. I'm sending in all my information and it holds. So in my head, I was like, all right, I put my neck out there. Like what's the next step? And so I had a month and a half, 2 months of just sitting, not doing anything and really questioning life decisions. Mm-hmm. And finally, I got the A-OK. I got onboarded. And I think it was maybe week 4 for them, week 5. So they had...
You're deep into the season.
Yeah. So the training cycle itself for a new team starts January or February. So they went all of January, February. They went through all of spring ball. May is completely off. They went through all of their summer training, all of training camp, and then season.
You missed it all.
I missed all of it. So me going in the first day, it was myself and 2 other new interns, and then 1 intern that was held over. He was holding it down. He was doing everything on his own. Us 3, the new interns, got in there, and they call it Fast Friday. And when they say Fast Friday, it's more of like a fast-paced CNS potentiating. It's done on Friday. They play Saturday, right? Okay. And so it's just, moving lightweight fast. I'm telling you, my head was on a swivel, just eyes open. I just was trying to be a sponge the whole time, and just seeing what I saw is they come running in, amped up, techno music blaring. Like it's my first experience in a collegiate weight room. They're doing this over here. They're going over here. They're asking me to, drop a medicine ball so they can do like a lying medicine ball chest press. Then they're running over the Kaiser units, doing some dynamic rows. They're going over there, doing some high pulls, and they're running around. I shit you not, the session was like 10 minutes for the full team to go in there. Then they go out, they do their walkthroughs, and then they're done. And I just remember that first day. I was like, my God. Holy shit.
Like, drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah. I was like, all right, in my head, obviously I'm trying to break apart the session. Like, all right, why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? But I missed all that. I missed all the building and leading up to it. The structure of their programs is completely detailed. You're also working with a different cut, different athletes cut from a different cloth. So they're able to read the card and then do the workout. But the amount of detail in that program was just like, oh, wow, this is next level, And so obviously I'm salivating, trying to learn all the information I can on the hows, the whats, and the to-dos. But, that experience at Stanford really opened my eyes to a well-rounded, structured program and how you can not only affect the physical performance of the athlete, but how you can grow a culture, a team culture, a successful team culture. I mean, Stanford is pretty prestigious, and they, had their run and all that good stuff, and they still are.
They've got it figured out.
Yeah. And so I just, was a sponge for the whole season. We went from week, I think 3 all the way through. They didn't make a bowl game. And then we had, I think, discretionary period. We're still hanging out, doing our thing. And then it was winter came about.
And you're waiting to know if you're getting held on or not?
Yeah. Yes. And so luckily we got retained or attained, whatever. And we're in it, the trenches. This is the period of what I missed, completely different from season. So we're showing up. I mean, I'm commuting from South San Jose all the way up to Palo Alto, driving up. We're getting there at like 5 a.m. We're basically setting up team runs on the field and just intricate, big, detailed runs. And it's 3 interns setting up the whole thing, hauling that out. And, just seeing that first day, I was like, oh my God, this is what I missed the whole time. And then I remember that first session, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to understand why specifically they're starting at this point, why they're doing it, and then seeing the growth and the building of the
right.
team.
So you've seen the end already, and now you're starting to put together the pieces.
Yeah. And so I think I was there for maybe 2 weeks, and the director, so going into the director's office, extremely nervous. And if you're an intern, you're going to find yourself in the director's office, there's 1 or 2 things going on.
Yep.
Did he call you in?
Yeah.
50-50.
Yeah. So our office was a closet. So he comes in, he's rarely comes in, and he's like, hey, Reyes, can you come in my office real quick? I was like, shit, what'd I do? And he sat down and he said, I dropped off your resume over to Fresno State. Expect a text or a call, later today for a job offer. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, this is amazing.
Wow.
Just completely
Was that out of the blue?
left field.
I don't know if I'd heard that story before.
No, it was
You didn't even see this coming.
no, I did not.
I didn't realize you didn't apply there.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, this got past me, man.
This was a referral, and the director at Fresno State, Andy Ward, he was at Stanford, and funny enough,
God bless that guy.
funny enough, Carol, the director at Stanford at the time, was an intern under Ward. So Ward was the director of interns, or that was his oversight at the time. And so like there's that relationship there, which I quickly found out, your network is your net worth.
Yep.
So
Stanford's a thing too, man.
yeah, I was extremely grateful for that. To this day, I'm super thankful for giving me my opportunity to get into a legit coaching role. And so I had a couple days to gather my things and get out to Fresno. I didn't have an apartment at the time, so the first couple days I was staying at, they call it, I think, the University Hotel. You know it?
I'm laughing because you just going from Palo Alto to Fresno, California. I don't live in Palo Alto, but I spent a lot of time. It's not that far from here, right? But I did live in Fresno for quite a few years, and you're talking a very, very different part of the planet, not just part of the state. Like
gritty.
It's, to say the least, it's definitely different, and I know exactly where you're talking about it.
Yeah, right on. What is that?
It ain't Palo Alto.
Yeah, so I moving out there, I had an apartment set up, but they're cleaning it, getting it ready for me. So the first couple of days I was out there, I was staying in this hotel. This hotel was the sketchiest place. I moved out there. I had all my stuff in my car. I couldn't put it anywhere. And I was like, all right, if all my stuff gets stolen, there's nothing I can do about it. Like it is what it is. So I stayed there. And this elevator in the hotel must have been the first elevator ever invented. It was that old. And I'm staying there. In the middle of the night, I'm hearing yelling, I'm hearing all this different crazy stuff. I was like, what have I gotten myself into, man? Like
chasing the dream, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And then it must have been February was our first start. So it was their first session for winter. So Stanford started a little earlier. Fresno State started. And
this is football.
This was football.
Yeah.
And so, I guess I skipped over that, but I got brought on for a coaching assistant role. So it's on paper, it's part-time. And it was assisting with football. I think there was a staff of, including all of us, 7, including the head guy. And I was overseeing cross country and track. So with the track and field, the coaches did the programming. So I was just kind of being a liaison and making sure everything is good. And then cross country, I was able to actually get my hands on programming and executing those programs. Funny enough, their training session was right in the middle of the football session. So I had to split off from football and train them on the side on the 2 racks.
Yeah. I'm not surprised by that, actually, but I get it.
This was before we opened up the other weight room. But I mean, it was like Stanford all over again. I'm drinking
nonstop.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm young at the point. I don't know everything. I don't know anything. And so I treated it like that. I was just a sponge. I was trying to see exactly the difference between Stanford and Fresno State. Like, how is this ran? How is that ran? What are these expectations? What are these standards? And I'm trying to, obviously uphold those standards and do my job. And so I just kept my head down for that first training phase, and getting into spring ball was like that. It was quick. And so we got into that season, and I mean, if anybody knows me, I'm a huge college football fan.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I got to be professional on the sidelines and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm a fan. So I'm like standing on the sideline.
Who's the first game?
It was first game. I think it was Cal Poly. We played Cal Poly at home.
Okay.
And then I forget. It was either Oregon State or USC. I think it was Oregon State.
So there's always, so it's the WAC still, right? I mean, I have no idea what they've done with the leagues anymore, but it was the WAC conference.
So,
yeah. So at the time. So anyway, they move things around, but those poor kids are always going to have to go play like the USCs or I think you guys are playing, aren't you guys opening up with Michigan this year?
Hell yeah, we are.
You guys are opening up with
Michigan. Yeah, we are.
And so when I say that, you're talking about Fresno State, which actually has made a run. I remember they beat, I believe they beat USC in the Freedom Bowl when I was a kid. I remember it was a big deal. There's been some amazing players that have come out of Fresno State. I mean, Leslie O'Neal's no joke, right? Both David and his brother, the cars came out of Fresno State.
Mhm.
If you're a Raiders fan or
Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams, Texans, who was the first quarterback there. Anyway, the point of that is there's a lot of talent that's come out of there, over the years. But, when you start putting them and stacking them against teams like SC, Michigan, it's a different deal. So I think my eyes would have been big on the sideline too, dude.
Yeah, I mean, it was more of like a starstruck thing. And surprisingly, that first year, that Cal Poly game gave us a little run. Obviously, offense is trying to get, meshed together and all that, but it was,
as they say, any given Sunday or Saturday, depending on where you're at.
We played Oregon State that next week, and that was like, I got to experience like, oh shit, this is fucking college football.
This is real.
This is real.
Mm-hmm.
They packed the stadium,
Mm-hmm.
Pac-12, Oregon State, in Fresno State.
Mm-hmm.
We're going toe-to-toe. Big, huge game. Came all the way down to the wire. Oregon State drove all the way down to the 1. They did a wildcat formation, I think, and gave it to like their utility back. He played tight end, fullback, running back, whatever. Ran it in. And,
game over.
Game over. And it was just, you felt what the players felt.
Mm-hmm.
You put all that work in, all that time, coaching, you give your heart, your passion to it. And it just, you feel, to a certain extent, you feel what the players feel. And that to me was like, all right, I'm doing what I want to do. This is my passion.
Mm.
This is my passion right here.
I get
and
it.
So,
That's so funny.
we go on, we have a great season. We end up winning the Mountain West Championship, go to the LA Bowl game and just playing in SoFi. And again, big football fan here. I'm in SoFi. We're going touring in, the LA Chargers locker room, the Rams locker room. And I'm like, holy fuck, that's Austin Eckler's locker room. That's
Right.
fucking, I was like, wow.
Fanboy.
Yeah. So it was a great experience. And so obviously with year to year, I gained more and more responsibilities. So coming out of that season, going into the next season, at the time, I think I was with cross country, track and field, football. In addition to that, we had a coach leave. I offered to oversee the swim and dive until we found a coach to bring it on. I saw that as an opportunity.
It's a
to
smart
continue.
move.
Mhm.
Smart move.
I wanted to coach.
Work.
I wanted to work. I wanted to coach.
Find work.
Yeah. And so I was able to do that. And I think it was the second season, I got called into director's office. Again, it wasn't as nerve-wracking as it was being an intern, but obviously it's like, all right, what's up? Got sat down and I was offered the role of overseeing baseball. To me,
It's a big job.
huge job.
It's a huge job, man.
Huge job. So obviously I said, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
It's more
Put me in, coach.
responsibilities.
Put me
Yeah,
in, coach.
exactly. Let me cook. So I was able to kind of drop those sports and just focus on football and baseball, which is great. And so that first year, it's completely different. I think I had maybe 2 weeks to train as an off season before they started the fall ball. So for me personally, I was like, I just need to get them ready.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to do anything crazy. Just do basic training. Let's get these guys going. So got them rolling, went through the season. And then on the other side, there's a coaching change. And so with that coaching change with baseball, I was able to sit down and we were able to really create a true off season. That's where our money lies, is the off season, right? We want to sprint the guys. We want to lift the guys. We want to make sure the guys are recovering, right? Set you up properly for your fall ball season, right? Prove to the coaches what you can do. And so I just sank my teeth down and worked. And then, everything cut out. So
How'd they do?
with that season,
Mhm.
this last season,
Mhm.
championship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Obviously, we don't win games as a strength coach, but I am extremely proud of that team and that team culture that we built in the offseason to carry through the season and be as successful as we were. So.
Yeah, it's interesting with the strength and conditioning coaches that are usually the last ones to get recognized, but the first ones to get fired. When things are good, they're the last ones to get recognized, and when things are bad, they're the first ones to get fired, as if it's all their fault, right?
Yeah.
It's a tough job, but I think it's a conference championship is one way of measuring it. Maybe the other way of measuring it is the metrics that you may be tracking. Obviously, there's a lot of things you're tracking as a coach. We can get into a little bit of that, but specifically, one of the things that comes to mind when I look at pro and collegiate sports is, aside from what's in the win and the loss column, part of the win and the loss column for me is what's happening with athlete attrition during a season. It's the one thing you can count on, but there's no way to predict it. However, at the end, you can look back and say, without having been able to predict or project anything, this did and this didn't happen. And again, there's some objectivity there and some subjectivity there. But let's talk about like injury rates and things like that. Were there any things that you could take from the previous stuff that you had inherited to the things that you had kind of taken through and really been a part of the entire time, and match those up and go, well, looks like we made some major, you can connect dots here. Looks like we made some major improvements. Anything?
Yeah. So, I mean, just speaking in the baseball realm, just because I have direct kind of oversight there, the first year, the 2 weeks of our off season, we were able to get some good training, and obviously we trained through our fall ball, but
it's tough to establish a baseline. Yeah.
Their sport is at the forefront, right? You're not going to be doing anything crazy. So, I just basically used it as an opportunity to educate to the guys recovery and recovery protocols. Something as simple as soft tissue, stretching, and activation. Super simple, right? You got a nagging quad. Hey, guess what? Get on the foam roller, get some deep soft tissue stuff. Hey, all right, now go do a couch stretch, try to elongate the muscle. All right, hey, okay, now go do some TKEs to activate a little bit, right? And then basically use that formula to just kind of educate the guys on that. And then in addition to that, all the recovery protocols in athletic training. Like we got Normatec boots, you got, hot tub, cold tub, all that good stuff.
All the cool stuff.
All the cool stuff, right? And so essentially that first season, we had some nicks and bruises and stuff. So I keep a little journal that I write down, and, at the end of the season with a athletic trainer, we kind of go over it in a little bit more detail. Because at the end of the day, best ability is availability, right? So I'm trying to make these guys as available as possible, right? So the second season, I made it a huge point to get their hamstrings right. We had a lot of guys, and it's surprisingly in baseball, they get a lot of hamstring injuries. And it's because they're sprinting down first base. They're trying to beat out the ball. Their foot is out in front of them. And that just breaking rate of force, just right in the hamstring, they pop it. And so we used a couple of sports science stuff, mainly our Nord board. So it's essentially you get them on there, you test their hamstring strength. It's right to left. You get asymmetries and force production. And essentially your basically knees are down on a board, ankles are strapped in, and you're doing a Nordic. And so we're basically profiling the guys and seeing exactly, all right, 5% asymmetry, you're good. 10% asymmetry, yellow flag, I'm going to keep my eye on you. 15 and above, all right, like what's going on here, right? So we're doing some hamstring work, but we're also taking care of their hips because we understand the pelvic complex and the effect that it has on the hamstrings and, building up the glutes, building up the hips, all that good stuff. So I made it a point to always have some kind of posterior chain work in, some kind of recovery model at the end. And this season, perfect.
No problems.
No problems.
So I think to just speak, again, coming back, I think it speaks to fundamentals. You mentioned a couple of things. The best kind of availability is what?
Best ability is availability.
Yeah. So the best ability is availability. And I've heard that said so many times. Again, I work in a couple different, when I say work, I'm involved in a few different genres here. One of that happens to be like with first responders. And I think that in and of itself is a very overlooked piece by people that are maybe putting out programming or just dudes, that are going through their workouts and not understanding that concept that you've got to be available when the job demands that you're available, and what happens when you're not, and what are the things that are maybe contributing to the not that you could be doing differently. And in this case, what you're talking about is some really fundamental stuff. You're using some technology, but you're using your brain to assess, like, how do I ensure that availability to the best of my ability now to ensure that availability? And it's, well, let's get a baseline, right? And let's take some notes and let's understand, get a high level of awareness of where we are currently so that we can keep an eye on this, we can track, and then we can make adjustments as necessary. And again, going back to this other genre, people listen to the show and listen to the other episodes and stuff, like, never ceases to amaze me how dudes will go out, they will spend thousands, tens of thousands for that matter, of dollars on equipment, on devices, and things to give
supplements.
Yeah, but it's that too, like in the workout side, in search of capability. But when it comes down to it, the fundamentals are usually the things that are lacking, and it doesn't matter how much money you've spent or how much ability you might have if you can't do it on demand when the time comes. And the guys generally that end up winning, right, in these things, whether it's a shooting competition or BJJ or something like that, are the dudes that just do the basic shit all the time, and they execute those fundamentals with a high level of precision. So I say all that to say, coming back to the athletes that you're working with in terms of being a champion, right? What are some of the most common things that you see, you know, from champions? It's that, I mean, and one of the ones that gets brought up on the show actually quite frequently, and I'm not a big fan of this guy. I am, not of the dude, but of him as an athlete, is Tom Brady, right? And all the things that dude did to be the champion that he is, and arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, and he'll probably always be that guy, for all the reasons you can measure, and then probably some ones that you can't. But there was a lot of measurement going into his preparation and the things that he did season to season, despite not being the best athlete on the field, right? There's no doubt about it. Certainly not the strongest guy, not the fastest guy, didn't have the strongest arm, you know, all of the things, right? We can talk about all the things he didn't have, but what he did do is fundamentals. And so with the coaching stuff and how the transference over into being successful is really just digging down to like, hey, where am I now? What are the basic things that I can be working on before we start all this fancy shit? Really cool though that you got some technology and some things that you can use to measure. And if you have that availability or that available to you in order to do, fuck yeah, take advantage of that stuff. But do you actually know what the fuck you're doing with it? Mm-hmm. Which is a whole other thing. Because I've been in strength and conditioning rooms, physical therapy offices, clinics, things like that, where they got all kinds of fancy equipment, and the dude using it knows dick all about what he's doing there or how he's executing whatever he's doing. I find that to be problematic. So I think it's interesting, just kind of in your process, that you weren't trying to reach too far to do something crazy, I think is what you said. Like, I only have this. What can I do with the time that's in front of me? And take or pull from all the things that I know, and not try and get too fancy or do something that, you know, doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, right. Like, I feel like people get too lost in the weeds with the sports science realm, right? Where, like you just said, get back to the basics. Guess what the basics are? How's your nutrition? What's your sleep? Mm-hmm. How's your recovery? And so going back to the injury prevention and all that stuff, you cannot 100% prevent injuries. However, the team that I get to work with, not just baseball, but the support staff with our nutrition coach and our athletic trainer, we all work together to build a holistic program, mm-hmm. said earlier, mm-hmm. to help promote health. So the biggest thing as far as like being a champion, like you said, is doing the basic things right. These young men are in kind of a developmental program. It is our duty to be able to educate them on that stuff so they can build those habits. Big thing is habits. Right? Because ultimately, if their goal is to get in the MLB, hey, guess what? College sports is a stepping stone. Guess what the next stepping stone is? Minor league. You're not going to have a whole lot of resources, a little bit more than college, but you need to fall back on those basics to be able to push that needle further. So,
yeah, I think it's so important. Again, going back to like the athlete listening, or the person that is a professional doing something else, but also should consider themselves a professional athlete as a result. But just maybe bringing in, and I said this once before, like the parents, right? The parents, because you're working with, you said kids, young men. They came from somewhere. Somebody had some influence over them somewhere, whether that was a coach or, you know, again, a parent directly or indirectly, somebody that was working maybe more in a parenting role of some kind. You know, like when you were here, one of the things, my biggest disappointments while you were here is that we were just getting ready to get this youth training program kicked off here, and we got smacked in the side of the head with COVID, and it just pulled the rug right out from under our feet. And we'd spent a lot of time, you had spent a lot of time, the three of us sat down and we'd gone through a lot of things to try and put together the right kind of a program. And a lot of what we were doing there was helping to prepare young kids, first off, just get them moving, but prepare them for the things that they were going to be asked to do, knowing the process as former athletes, youth athletes and whatnot ourselves, and also like as a parent now, knowing kind of what the kids are up against, in schools and in athletics and in sports and so forth, and that not coming to fruition really bothered me. But what I heard you talk about was basically the same exact stuff we were planning then. And I just talked, I guess I'm saying this because there's a lot of parents that listen to this show, and there's a lot of people that consider themselves athletes and should do that. There's a lot of people that consider some athletes, and then I'd challenge them with the like, are you really behaving like one, or are you just calling yourself one? And whatever that means. And then there's the whole level professional, versus amateur. What are you? How are you behaving? I think has much more to do with whether or not you should or shouldn't be calling yourself an amateur or professional versus how you compete or what you're actually competing in. I digress. I'll get away from that. But going back to the youth, and that you are shaping young men as a young man, that's a big responsibility. I've had some other strength and conditioning coaches on the show that understood that very early on in their career, that was their job. So when we're talking to parents here, just with regard to like prepping kids or people that are listening, the kids that, I say that with all due respect, as the kids that are coming in, what are you seeing like, and what's separating those that are like handling themselves really well and kind of prepared, and those that are coming in and maybe not handling themselves as well as they could be and maybe unprepared? Characteristics, traits, things that you've picked up that they've gone through from a process perspective. What can you tell us about that stuff to maybe help other people with their own kids or their own process?
Yeah, so kind of just staying in the physical realm and within the weight room, and then obviously like the speed development. There's kind of a gap in development process in the high school realm, and it's all due to resources, right? Not every high school in the country has a strength coach or all that good stuff, but the ones that do, those guys are getting prepared from freshman all the way to senior year. They're getting introduced to just the basics, right? They're developing basic general strength, general speed, general power. And so when they get into the weight room, we don't necessarily have to be harping on them as far as their squat technique, as far as their power clean technique, their sprint technique, all that good stuff. So they're kind of getting ready to, train, right? Yeah, there needs to be a little bit more intervention with strength and power and speed, but their baseline is a little bit higher than those who might not have the resources or might not invest in that side. So the ones that are, hanging back a little bit, we have to take a couple steps back and kind of address like, all right, yeah, we can get these guys on the force plates. Yeah, we can get these guys on the 1080s. Yeah, we can do this. But at the end of the day, they need skill acquisition within basic foundational movements.
So
can you say that again?
Yeah. Say it again. Say it again for those who are listening.
They need basic skill acquisition in just the main movements. They need to, learn how to squat properly, hinge properly. They need to know how to press, whether that be horizontal, vertical, overhead. They need to know how to pull, vertical, horizontal. They need to know how to sprint, right? Long distance, short distance. They need to know how to change a direction, right? Work in the frontal, work in the transverse plane. They need all that. That's kind of the main difference I see within the two different athletes on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, basic skills. I think that's, again, going back to fundamentals. I wonder, some, I guess, what I see is a huge overdoing it. A lot of times they're either not getting the skills or those skills are trying to be,
they're trying to advance the skill.
They're trying to advance a skill that isn't quite there yet. And in a part of their maturity process that makes zero sense whatsoever. I mean, have you seen or been exposed to any of that?
As far as like
athletes coming in that, maybe for lack of a better term, have been messed up by a quote unquote coach.
Not necessarily. I do see a lot of stuff on social media. If we want to
talk about that.
Yeah, talk about that.
Talk about that.
So like youth programs, they'll throw a kid on a parachute and like, max effort sprints. Or yeah, that's great for, max velocity technique, but like how far along is this kid developed?
Who are you applying that to?
Yeah, is he 13 years old? In my opinion, that kid doesn't need to touch a parachute until 19, 20. He's in college.
Needs to be mature.
Yeah. So back to your question. I think what I see a lot on social media is people reaching too far and not sticking to the basics. You can squeeze so much stimulus out of just the basics. You can ride that all the way until they're in college. Shoot, I'd argue all the freshmen that are coming in, we just need to put them on that type of program, right? We don't need to, if they're, explosive deficient, yeah, they need some explosive training, but let's not stray too far away from the base level of strength, right?
So going through that kind of that continuum, people want to do the fancy, sexy shit like throwing a parachute on and max velocity, or max sprinting. But they don't have the basics underneath. And I people are like, yeah, but I can run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know you can run, but how
are you efficient?
But how do you run?
Mm-hmm.
I sprint and I'm faster than the other kids or whatever. Or my kid's the fastest sprinter. Does that make him a good sprinter because he's faster than the other? How do you get better at sprinting? Well, you got to sprint, right? You don't have to put a parachute on to get better at sprinting.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you get a parachute on in order to develop more power, right? But if you don't have sprint mechanics, right, which are going to be rooted in basically awareness and coordination, but also in strength, so that you can support your body, why are you throwing these things into the mix? This is a thing that we talk about quite frankly quite a bit on the show, just with people trying to layer things on that don't need to be layered on. I get it, people want to try new stuff, and it's cool and it looks cool, and down the road, it makes sense. When you think about it, now I've got resisted running. Resisted running equals more power, more strength, more velocity, all of those things. Yeah. But if you're not ready for any of that yet, it doesn't make any sense. And so the question would be how do you know they're ready? So what are you doing when people are coming in, or what advice can you give parents to kind of, as a litmus or sort of an assessment process, through through their journey as they're coming up? I mean, because what a 12-year-old is much different, or what a 12-year-old is doing might be much different than a 15-year-old, or maybe not, depending on the 12 or the 15-year-old. They don't just automatically graduate. It's not like the belt system when you go to pay to get your Taekwondo black belt. Every 3 months we test, and their parents are paying me, so I have to hand them a belt, and they automatically move to the next thing. Well, I've been in those rooms plenty of times where, again, the 15-year-old kid that's the whatever color fucking belt in Taekwondo is these days, there's a 6-year-old that is way fucking better than him, but they just moved through this process and they tick boxes or whatever to get there. And that isn't what this is. So again, I digress a little bit. Maybe what we talk about is just, maybe can you talk a little bit about your advice to parents and athletes about how or where their kids should be and how to evaluate this so that they don't wind up in a trap that, I guess in the worst case scenario hurts them. But if it's not helping them, what are we doing? At the same time, so for throwing good money after bad and pretending that it's giving us a result that we're not really getting.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of like a loaded question in trying to cover all the bases. The young athlete, I would say, expose them to as many sports as possible. Mm-hmm. Sports that they want to play. Don't force them to be doing football if they don't want to be doing football. I've seen that before, and it doesn't look fun for anybody. But I think exposing them to the different stimuluses within the sport, right? Football, an evasion sport on a field is much different than basketball. Hand-eye coordination with basketball and dribbling a ball and all that good stuff. Yeah, there's might be a little bit of change of direction in evasion, right? But you are getting max effort jumping in that, right? You're getting hand-eye coordination and all that good stuff. So that's on the sports side of things. But as far as the training for your sport, when we say basic training, right, I would start at the fundamentals. Can you squat with your body weight, right? All right. You got good proper mechanics right there, good foot alignment, good hip alignment. You're not caving in, you're not folding like a lawn chair when you squat. All right, now let's load you. Let's give you a dumbbell. All right, let's give you a kettlebell, 2 kettlebells. All right, now let's start with a barbell coming from the front, right? All right, now let's put it on the back. All right, that looks great. Hey, let's start loading it progressively, right? Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, yes,
yeah.
Not kind of. That's exactly it. And I think what parents walk into a lot of times, because I've been there, I've seen it, and I've been, I've found myself in some pretty uncomfortable situations because I'm asking questions that can't be answered. and I already knew the answer to that, and I knew they couldn't answer it, about why we're doing certain things as a coach on a field, on a court, on a mat, and things like that, or just in those type of environments, because parents have put their trust in a coach because another coach said, like, well, this football coach or this baseball coach said that I should go to this coach for strength and conditioning, or for batting, or for batting, or for pitching, or whatever the case, for the skill. And so those coaches are working together. And because the head coach makes the decision on whether my kid fucking plays or not, I know that the right answer for me is to go to that particular coach to get the batting practice, or the hitting coach, and pay that person. Because if I don't, and I go to this dude over here who actually makes a lot more fucking sense, my kid doesn't play. And so as a result, they fall into this trap of this system of well, one hand is feeding the other, or one hand is paying the other. Kids are getting poor coaching, poor training, and at the same time, the attention is being fed to them again, like you just said, through like social media. Like, this is the right thing to do. Somehow this makes sense. When the reality of it is they need basic fundamental skills. And where do you get those basic fundamental skills? From the coach that understands what those fundamental skills are, how to apply those skills, and who your kid is very, very specifically to all of those things. And the only way to get that is through an assessment, right? And so you were talking about that with this, circling this all the way back to your baseball players. Like, so if you're walking your kid into or you as an athlete are walking into some group class, like and this happens every Tuesday and Thursday night at this time, because that's when we can fit it around the soccer practice and the Bible study and the violin school and, and homework and, the other kids and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and all that shit. And they go, we're going to put them in there because that's the most convenient thing for us. You're doing your kid a disservice if that kid is not getting an assessment and being placed in the right thing for them at the particular time and place that they are in their journey. I say all that to say, because it applies to adults too, and they make those fucking decisions the same way. It's so frustrating to watch. And then they want to argue that, no, well, this is the right thing because so-and-so said, this is the plan to lose the 10 pounds or to, gain this much muscle or whatever else. Yeah, for who? For the coach that's delivering it that you're paying, or for you actually? And so again, like you worked before, you left here with a lot of aspiring athletes, those that were trying to get into college or on their way to college. And none of that included parachute training or force plates or anything like that at 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. Just a hot topic for me, obviously, because of my experience around it and how I think those kids then take those lessons later in life. And so going back to the coaching young men, we have a lot of conversations on this show about folks that are in their like late 30s, early 40s, or even nearing their late 40s or whatever at this point, and they're reaching back to what they were successful at or thought they were successful at some point. And when are they reaching back? They're reaching back to the same age for the people that you're dealing with now. They're going like, well, when I was back in college, I did this. And again, I'm saying all this to say would you just think about that for one fucking second?
Yeah. And go back to what Ryan was saying earlier. You can go so far with the basic fundamentals. You can squeeze so much out of that.
Yeah, it's skill acquisition.
It doesn't have to be fancy for it to work.
Force is king. Force is a prerequisite for power. Power is a prerequisite for speed. Invest all your time in the force application. If I'm a 12-year-old, 14-year-old, and I'm my weight trainer, whether that be in the private sector or high school, if I got accommodating resistance on it with bands and chains, yeah, that's good, right? But I'm not squeezing out the stimulus of just basic raw barbell movements, right? I'm not pushing the needle and dumping more and more investment in force potential. Yeah, I have force potential, right? And now I'm trying to transfer that force into more explosiveness. But then again, with that kind of relationship, I'm not really going to be any more explosive. Right? I'm going to be more explosive if I dump more information or more stimulus in the force production.
Yeah. So again, it's like whatever the workout of the day is or whatever that group that you're in, is your kid really getting stronger, or are they just getting better at the skill that they're practicing over and over again? And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but what I would ask is like, what's the goal? And based on the formula that you just put together, where how all this stuff builds on one another, if we're not focused on the strength training, skill of doing the movement that that we're going to be doing in order to build the strength, and not focused there. Like, how does all this line out? Okay, well, my kid, is way better at doing this thing. Okay, so he's better at a skill. Now what do we do with that skill? Now you've gotten just better at the skill of running. That doesn't mean you got necessarily a whole lot stronger. Maybe you built a little strength, but now we're working on the speed and power piece. Dude, you missed the whole point. Like, you got better at the skill. Now let's get more powerful, or excuse me, let's get more strong with that skill and learn how to apply more force through that skill. Same thing for adults. I see that, but again, checking into a watt of the day, or whatever it is, and you're moving lighter weight fast. Like, are you really building more capacity, more strength, more power, or are you maybe just getting better at that skill over time? And especially if you're entering it into it, that neuromuscular adaptation takes a while, and then the metabolic adaptation takes a while. So, in a year, you lost a bunch of weight, you got way better, you feel, and you probably are quite a bit stronger. Now, what do? Do you just do more of the same, or do you revisit practicing these skills in a strength-based format, or in a power and speed-based format, or in an endurance-based format? There's all these things you can layer on, but it all goes back to this basic formula of doing stuff, and people want to get real fancy with it, and they want to sell you some real, word salad type of program or whatever, and it's got, conjugate training and tier-based training and all these things. Those all have a time and place with the basic skills and with the basic fundamentals. I guess that's what I was trying to pull out of you there, is just understanding kind of what you're doing with fairly good athletes that are, generally speaking, let's be honest, they're probably pretty resilient. They're young dudes, right? Testosterone's pumping through them, right? 100%. They got all kinds of energy. They don't have a bunch of, cumulative injuries. I mean, what's their responsibilities or the liability really? You got to be a student athlete. That's the toughest thing they've ever faced in their life at this point, right? So they don't have all that other stuff piling on. So how do you help them? Give them the fucking basics. Just give them the basics. Just makes perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of going back to, the audience where they are in their 30s, the 40s, and they're falling back on their athlete realm and, what they're doing when they're an athlete and they want to start training there. Well, the reality is there's a detraining aspect if I haven't done anything, right? So let's circle back to the basics, right? If I haven't trained at all, right, in the last 10 years, I'm not going to go in first day, start doing a jump series, a plyo series, right? I'm not going to sprint. I'm not going to do some power cleans. I'm not going to squat. I'm not going to do some hinging, some single leg stuff, maybe some core. Because one, you're going to be sore as fuck the next day. You're not going to be able to train for about 3 to 4 days. Also, good luck to your tendons.
Right.
Good luck. Right. And so it always goes back to the basics on that, right? It's all about where you are and where your goals are. However, what do you need right now? So getting in front of a professional or someone who knows what they're talking about, they will be able to guide you to that goal, but evidently start where you're at.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's a solid message. And again, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is just like, you're working with a different population, the one that we don't talk about much, which is, again, that late teens to early 20s, athlete that, honestly is where a lot of the exercise testing happens. A lot of exercise protocols and things happen because they're in university. This is where the studies happen. This is where the grants are given to do studies and things like that. And so people kind of think about that, like where information is coming from to them from a lot of training, a lot of training research. It's around these types of folks, and that's not you. So be careful about how you're approaching your training program and where you're getting your information from with regard to the decisions that you're making. Let's move on from that, man. Let's talk like where do you want to see this thing going? Like what's on the future plan? I mean, you're a young man yourself, so where do you want to see strength and conditioning go for you?
Well, right now, 10 toes down, looking down, and we're starting training camp on the 30th. So that Tuesday, riding the season, week 1 against Michigan. So seeing everything, seeing everything that we put in the winter, and then just in the summer, seeing where the team is, especially with the change of the coaches, right? We our head coach Tedford stepped down, and we have Tim Skipper stepping in, which is going to be great. I'm excited. He brings a different energy, and the guys are responding differently, and we're seeing that. And I'm just ready to see these guys compete. And then luckily baseball comes back and they're starting right in sometime late August. So I'm gearing up for an off season for baseball. So football finishes, right? Going into season. Well, guess what? It's baseball off season. But as far as that, I got like a 5 to 10 year plan, right? I always look at kind of a little bit further in the future. I'm here right now. I'm coaching my ass off. I'm 10 toes down. But I've always had a passion for development. I've always wanted to get back into kind of the high school realm, kind of that age group, because it is incredibly important. I've seen the success of a high school athlete transitioning into the college sector and having the resources to have a strength and conditioning coach or a professional in the private sector and where they set themselves up for college. So I've always wanted to circle back to that route. And
does that kind of go back to your history as well?
As far
as when you were a high school athlete and then what happened with you and didn't you have an injury in high school?
Yeah, I had multiple.
Yeah. And then didn't it take you out of?
Yeah, it took me away from the game that I love. I was a big hamstring guy. I was always the kid with a pulled hammy, right leg, left leg, right leg, left leg. And then I tore it in JUCO. And it kind of like put me down this path of like, all right, I may not have the resources to be able to make myself resilient to that, but I was chasing knowledge. I was chasing to be able to be that coach, be that person, be there for that specific athlete. So there's always a high school route. It would be amazing to be able to have my own facility as someday. It might not be 5 years, 10 years, but sometime down the road, be able to sit, call my facility, my domain, and be able to continue to push the needle of human performance and athletic performance. I see those as two things.
I love that.
Yeah. So, but as of right now, 10 toes down, getting ready for football season, getting ready for baseball off season, seeing where it goes.
Sweet. Where do people, if they want to follow you and just kind of watch your journey happen and stuff like that, where do they go?
Mainly Instagram at Ryan Reyes.
Rhino?
Yeah.
Is that RYNO?
Yeah, all one word. You have no idea how many times people have read it wrong, saying Rhino R eyes. No, dude. How'd you get that, man? Yeah, you guys can follow me on Instagram. See a lot more of my personal life on there as opposed to content. For me personally, this is a separate subject, but it is amazing now that coaches are starting to put what they're doing with their teams on social media and the organized approach with that. So there's a couple guys on social media that are posting. So I don't know if I should plug them or not.
You can plug whoever you want, man. You can plug whoever you want.
So at Matt Gebert, I was with him at Stanford as an intern. He was an assistant coach. He's over there at Arizona right now. He just started putting out a lot of content that they're doing. And they completely revamped that program, and what they're doing is amazing.
Sweet.
So you can follow that journey. But as far as like content, what I'm doing with my athletes, it's hard for me to be behind a phone while I'm coaching.
Totally get it, man.
I can't do it.
Same for me. Yeah.
So if I'm working with someone one-on-one with some mobility training or some specifics, I could do that. But you'll find a lot more of my personal life on there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm proud of you, dude.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming in and sharing your journey to this point. I can't wait to continue to see what you guys do. Best of luck going into obviously the football season with the team. I can't wait to see what kind of happens and the things that you learn. I always enjoy connecting with you and kind of finding those things out and asking you questions because you're really good at answering and delivering information in a way that's meaningful. And then obviously with the baseball team as well and all the other things you're doing. So thanks for joining us today, man. I appreciate you.
I appreciate it. I'm sorry it took so long.
Yeah.
To get back here and get on this.
It's
not gonna lie, you put a camera in front of my face and a microphone, I start to stutter and feel like an idiot. I mean, we can circle back to our RDF Strong and RDF Max commercials.
We should do. Yeah, that's right. With all the videos.
Oh man, I hated that.
Like how many takes did we have to do?
Yeah. That's not my strong suit at all. So
but we can see you demonstrating those exercises in RDF Strong and Max.
That's actually a good
YouTube.
point. For those people that are listening that aren't watching, if you've ever been on the Red Dot Fitness YouTube channel and seen any of the exercise demonstration videos, there's two dudes. One is Marcus, who actually just moved on in his own strength and conditioning pathway. It was at Louisville, and now is in Illinois.
Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville.
Yeah.
As a strength and conditioning coach.
Who was very much influenced by you, while you were here. But I guess the point of that is like he wasn't awesome in front of the camera either, except for those exercise demonstrations. So you'll see him a lot in
before
those.
He blew up physically.
You'll watch him. You watch his transformation, his physical transformation. Like it's funny, people look at those old TRX videos and like, that is not Marcus.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that is not Marcus.
Well,
I think they would say that about you too now. Like some of the early videos to some of the later videos. So yeah, also Ryan's all over, like I said, Red Dot Max and Red Dot Strong, and then all the stuff that comes in there with demos. So anyway, man, thanks for coming back. Appreciate you. I hope to see you again soon.
Of course. Thank you for having me.